Geronda, you spent many years serving as an Orthodox missionary in Africa. What is your view of the Moscow Patriarchate establishing its own church structures there, outside the jurisdiction of the Patriarchate of Alexandria? What does this mean for the Orthodox mission and for African Orthodox believers themselves?
Με κάλεσαν και είχα υπηρετήσει την...
I was invited to serve in the mission in Africa, in Congo-Brazzaville. I served there for about 10 years without leaving the Holy Mountain, traveling there and back every 2 months. That country had close ties with Russia and the other countries of the former Soviet Union. At one point, after gaining independence, it became a satellite state of Moscow. That is, a state tied to Moscow through communist ideology, even though communism could not, in reality, be implemented in Africa. Congolese students went to Russia and the other communist countries to study on scholarships. Many of them returned home years ago. After the fall of communism, they took up senior government, political, and teaching positions there, which they continue to hold today. This maintained a connection with the Russian Church, and our church flock included quite a few Russian, Ukrainian, and Bulgarian women. Those who went to study, especially the Africans, dreamed of having a white, blonde, I do not know, beautiful wife. They married, brought their wives and children to Africa, and then usually abandoned their wives. The women, therefore, had to seek refuge in the church. We had many such cases, and there was also a connection with Orthodoxy in Russia. But all of this is completely different from what is happening now. Unfortunately, there's a mindset that has nothing to do with the true church. The Apostolic Orthodox Church. All missions and local church structures in Africa fall under the Patriarchate of Alexandria. This was how we operated. In every mission that was established, or in every region to which someone went to carry out missionary work, that person reported to the Patriarchate of Alexandria. The Patriarchate provided ecclesiological and ecclesiastical oversight and pastoral care for all this work. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian issue arose and caused a schism within the Orthodox Church. There were also reactions that were not at all ecclesiastical. One of these reactions was the application in Africa of a principle held by the Russian Church. There had been no request from Africa itself. The principle was imposed on the region by the Moscow Patriarchate. This reaction should not have happened. It is wrong. Especially when it concerns people and places that are only now coming to know Orthodoxy, admire it, and say that it is the Apostolic Church. It is to this church that, after a long search, many Africans turn from other denominations or from their traditional religions.
που βρίσκεται σε όλο τον κόσμο, εκκλησιαστικά.
This principle of the Russian Church, so to speak, is that every Russian, wherever in the world that person may be, belongs ecclesiastically to the Moscow Patriarchate. The Moscow Patriarchate may therefore have bishops in different places, but the Moscow Patriarchate has now attracted not Russians, but primarily Africans, who, for one reason or another, had economic or ecclesiastical difficulties with the Patriarchate of Alexandria. The economic difficulties arose because the Patriarchate had no means of supporting all the efforts and new initiatives developing across many African countries. It could not adequately cover salaries and other needs. For that reason, local churches such as the Church of Cyprus and the Church of Greece, as well as Orthodox churches from America, Australia, and Canada, provided assistance. The other reason is that Africans, not being mature, entered the church but continued their former way of life. That way of life is unusual in terms of our moral principles and customs. It includes polygamy, often an association with magic, and an excessive attachment to the family. That is, a very strong bond with the family. All of this created problems in missionary work. As a result, among both Christians and clergy, some were removed, some were deposed, and some were suspended from priestly ministry. They found themselves outside the church or without the ministry they had held before. In a difficult situation, the Exarchate, created by the Moscow Patriarchate, appeared immediately. It welcomed these people, took them in, covered all their expenses, and, in some cases, ordained them and placed them in positions of responsibility. Thus, a strange situation arose. One that is not correct from an ecclesiastical standpoint. These people do not fall under the Patriarchate of Alexandria, which has ecclesiological responsibility for Africa. Nor, of course, do they fall under the relevant local metropolitan sees. Moreover, people who are not fit to serve in the clergy become heads of Orthodox church communities, creating a schism and parasynagogues. These parishes are not part of the local ecclesiastical jurisdiction in Africa, but report directly to the Moscow Patriarchate. Of course, quite a few of them may recognize this situation and want to return. But you know that when someone is very poor, money plays a major role, and that person can easily come under its influence. Likewise, when a person loses the position, an honor they had because of their own actions and through their own fault, they look for somewhere to find protection and shelter. This is why many joined the Russian Exarchate and became connected with the Russian Patriarchate. We hope that the Ukrainian issue will cease to exist in its present form and will be resolved. We also hope that it will not come to the point where the poorest of the poor and the least of the least, Orthodox Africans, suffer because of the ecclesiastical relations between the major patriarchates.
The main problem facing contemporary Orthodoxy is the lack of worthy examples.